Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, the Miami Heat have signed former Cleveland Cavaliers forward Kevin Love, and they have signed former Portland Trailblazers center Cody Zeller to their roster. And I'm going to go over whether I think these are good moves that the Miami Heat are making to add Kevin Love and Cody Zeller, and whether I think both players can help out the Miami Heat come the NBA playoffs. Now, obviously, the Miami Heat recently sent Dwayne Dedmon and a few draft picks to the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Miami Heat were very thin at the forward and center spots, and the Heat needed to make a decision to add some players to those spots to be able to have the depth that they need for the Miami Heat to be able to go far in the NBA playoffs, because they were really thin at the center positions. And they decided to add Kevin Love, who had just been waived by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he's going to sign with the Miami Heat. And they're also going to sign Cody Zeller, who hasn't actually played in the NBA for a year since last playing for the Portland Trailblazers last year. And Cody Zeller's been a free agent this whole entire season. And now the Miami Heat are deciding to add both of them to potentially add depth to the roster. And they're both really interesting moves. Now, Kevin Love's had a really long NBA career. He entered the NBA in the 08-09 season for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he averaged 11 points per game in his first season for the Timberwolves. And his best season that he's had in the NBA was in the 2013-2014 season for the Timberwolves, when he averaged 26.1 points per game. But then the Cleveland Cavaliers got him, and from 2014-15 through 2022-2023, he's been a really solid player for the Cavaliers, and he's had almost a decade-long run with them. And his best season for the Cavaliers was in 2016-2017, where he averaged 19 points per game. And LeBron was on that team, and that probably helped elevate his level of play. But since LeBron left the Cleveland Cavaliers, they haven't really been a great team. But now they're starting to play a lot better, and they have a lot of younger players that are really helping out the Cavaliers and making them a much better team. And now Kevin Love's 34 years old. He's an older player, and he's not playing as well as he used to. And he kind of has been benched for the Cavaliers, and he only averaged 8.5 points per game this past season. But for the Miami Heat to add Kevin Love, that's not a bad decision, because you're going to be able to add him to your team for a relatively cheap price. He's an older player that provides really good depth for your team. He's not going to be a starting caliber player because you have better players ahead of him. So I don't think adding Kevin Love's a bad decision at all, because even though he's 34 years old, he could still be a really solid bench player for the Miami Heat, as long as he averages 8 to 9 points per game, just like he did in his final season with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you look at Cody Zeller's numbers, he has not been in the NBA as long as Kevin Love has, and he hasn't had as good of his career as Kevin Love has either. He's never had an all-star level season, whereas Kevin Love has made the all-star game 3 times. But Cody Zeller's still been a really serviceable player in the NBA. And you look at his first season when he got drafted by the Charlotte Bobcats, which is what they were called at the time, and all the way throughout his tenure with the Charlotte Hornets, his best season that he had, he averaged 11.1 points per game in the 2019-2020 season for the Charlotte Hornets. But the biggest issue that's been with Cody Zeller throughout his career has been injuries. If he had been a healthy player throughout his NBA career, he probably would have put up better numbers, and he might still be with the Charlotte Hornets. But instead, after the 2021 season, Cody Zeller went out to the Portland Trailblazers, and he only averaged 5 points a game that season, and he didn't really play that much. And then the Portland Trailblazers waived him, and he hasn't been in the NBA this whole entire season. He did work out with the Utah Jazz last year, but they didn't sign him, and he's been waiting to get on another team this whole entire time. But now that the Miami Heat need a backup center, getting Cody Zeller, even though his stats are nowhere near as good as Kevin Love's has been throughout his career, I still think he's a pretty solid addition, because when healthy, he's a guy that could average 8-9 points per game off the bench for a team. So I think that this is a good addition for the Miami Heat as well, as long as he's on a relatively cheap contract. And if you look at the Miami Heat projected depth chart with Kevin Love and Cody Zeller out of the roster, at point guard, they have Kyle Lowry and Gabe Vincent. At shooting guard, they have Tyler Hero, Max Strus, and Victor Oladipo. Small forward, Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, and Duncan Robinson. So at those 3 positions, they have a lot of solid players that have definitely helped out their rotation. But at power forward, all they had was Caleb Martin and Nikola Jokic. And Caleb Martin's a really solid player, but he's not an elite level player. So he's probably a guy for the Miami Heat, instead of him averaging 35 minutes a game, he should probably be playing 25 to 30 minutes a game. And then Kevin Love could play the other 18 to 20 minutes and probably average 8 to 9 points per game off the bench, like he did for the Cleveland Cavaliers, on a relatively cheap contract. So Kevin Love could be a really good option at the backup power forward spot for the Miami Heat. And I think there's a possibility that Kevin Love could start, but I think it's more likely that he does come off the bench for the Miami Heat. And then at center, the Miami Heat have Bam Adebayo. Now they're going to have Cody Zeller, Omer Yurtseven, and Udonis Haslem. Obviously, Udonis Haslem, everybody knows, is the oldest player in the NBA right now, and he doesn't play, and he's more of a player coach. Omer Yurtseven has a lot of potential, but he's been injured a lot this season, so he hasn't really played much. And Bam Adebayo is a really great center. So Cody Zeller could probably come in for Bam Adebayo and play 15 minutes a game if they don't use Omer Yurtseven at all. So Cody Zeller could probably average 5 to 7 points per game off the bench. As long as he stays healthy, he should be a really good addition for the Miami Heat on a relatively low-costing contract like Kevin Love. Now, the big questions are, should the Miami Heat have added Kevin Love and Cody Zeller to their roster, and are both these players going to be able to help the Miami Heat come the NBA playoffs? I think that both of these additions, adding Kevin Love and Cody Zeller, are relatively harmless additions for the Miami Heat because Kevin Love is an older player that's not going to be on a big contract for the Miami Heat, and the Heat don't have a lot of money to spend right now, so he's going to be on a really cheap contract coming off the bench at the power forward position for the Miami Heat, and he should be able to average 8 to 9 points per game and do a lot of things for the Miami Heat at the power forward spot when Caleb Martin's on the bench, and be able to provide really solid veteran play for the team. And his addition should definitely help out the Miami Heat come the NBA playoffs to give them a little bit more bench production that they've sorely lacked this season. And adding Cody Zeller as well on a cheap contract, just like Kevin Love's going to get, I don't really see any harm, no foul there either. As long as Cody Zeller stays healthy, he should be a solid backup option for Bam Adebayo, possibly averaging 5 to 7 points per game, and to be able to provide a solid 15 minutes off the bench every game for the Miami Heat. So I think that adding both of these players are really smart decisions for the Miami Heat. They're going to both be on cheap contracts. The Miami Heat don't have a lot of money to spend, so getting both of them were really smart to be able to help their team potentially have more depth at the power forward and center positions, to be able to compete more with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics and the other top teams in the Eastern Conference. So I think that the Miami Heat made great decisions adding both players, and I think that the Miami Heat will benefit, even if it's just slightly, by getting both players on the roster, and they'll both be able to help out the Miami Heat a decent amount come the NBA playoffs. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content, like this video down below, comment down below what you think about the Miami Heat adding Kevin Love and Cody Zeller to the roster, and whether you think both players should have been added to the Miami Heat roster, and whether you think both players will be able to help out the Miami Heat come the NBA playoffs. And I will see you next time.